And so we want to come into communities, we want to work with communities. This is a great example of MUSC working with the town, working with the larger community to bring service here. You're growing fast. Your need for emergency care is evident almost every day. I get stories, you get stories, and by having an emergency room here that can treat any kind of stroke or heart attack or car accident if it happens, anything, you can get stabilized quickly and then can get moved downtown if need be at that time. So I think this is going to be a great step forward for your community, and I want to thank you on behalf of the Board of Trustees at MUSC, as well as President Cole, who couldn't be here today. But once again, appreciate everything you've done for this project, and we look forward to inviting everyone to the groundbreaking and eventually the ribbon cutting. So,
Great.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Very much. You know, this is a marvelous community, and it's part of even a bigger community between residents here and Seabrook and Wadmalaw and Johns Island, and it's just wonderful. You know, it's just wonderful to have that health care here. So thank you all very, very much. Mayor's update. Last month, and it's in your minutes of December the 7th, we had a presentation by one of the senior executives from Southwest Water Company, and he talked in terms of a rate increase that Southwest would be having on all of the residents. I'm not sure if Diana is here either, but Diana came up and spoke very articulately about the need for the town to intervene. We will be intervening. We will be intervening. We have contracted with a gentleman by the name of Jack Pringle, and Mr. Pringle was referred to us. He's with the firm of Adams and Reese. He's referred to us by the firm that we last used. How long ago?
3 years ago.
3 years ago. So anyway, Stephanie and I and Dan met with Jack, and he's filed his paperwork, so that is underway. So in case you were wondering or had questions, we will act as an intervener. On January the 4th, we received a petition from Kiowa residents, and let me just read to it so that it's in the record. To amend, modify, and clarify Section 12-79 and also add conditions to 12-155 for Town Council to consider before approving the plan development rezoning application. We started that process in earnest this morning. The room was full. I don't know how many people watched it online, but as I said to everybody this morning, this is not this will only be one of a number of sessions that we will have dealing with these very important subjects of annexation and zoning. We will have one on February the 8th and one on February the 22nd. The 8th will be similar to the workshop format that we had this morning. The 22nd will be in a town hall format where the community will be able to provide their perspectives, their views, whichever they would like to do relative to the process between now and as we proceed. I thought that Stephanie and Joe, to thank them, they thought they did fine in terms of helping town council understand the existing ordinance and the implications of the proposed changes. There are 15 proposed changes. There are 5 associated with 12-55 or 12-79 and 10 in response to 12-159. So we went through them one by one, and we did get through them, but there's a lot of work yet to be done. And I think if interested, the city of Bluffton, South Carolina, apparently has an approach that they've used relative to annexation and zoning, and a number here, I mean, many of us are, and a number in the audience appear to be familiar with it. So, you know, if anybody is curious, you may want to link up to that particular portion of what the city of Bluffton has. we'll see to what extent that works as a good template. There's a presentation today by Mark Primar. It really will be item B on the agenda. We will have citizen comments I'll be turning over in just a moment. Citizen comments now, if there's any comments that citizens have, but I will also have time allotted for citizen comments after Mark's presentation. So your choice is yours. You can speak obviously in both times, but if you want to wish to, you hear Mark's presentation and refer directly to what he's presenting. You make your own decision, but I just wanted to let you know we will have time. And then finally, welcome Craig Harris. Craig is our new Public Safety Director. Okay, step up. Welcome, Craig. We are glad to have you on board. And that is all that I have for mayor comments. Citizen comments. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, I'm Doug Benham, live on 119 Ocean Course Drive, and I would like to make comments related to the noise ordinance, please. I'll begin by acknowledging that the process of revising the noise ordinance has been a long one. I'm sure you're all tired of it and want to get finished with it, but I believe that there are still some serious deficiencies in the second reading that should be addressed prior to final passage. To begin, the communication to the public regarding the nature of the changes was minimal, and what communication was given was materially misleading. The December 4th town notes summary indicated that the change to the ordinance could change the hours of the current noise ordinance prohibiting amplified sound from 11 p.m. to 11 a.m., changing to 11 p.m. to 10 a.m. That sounds like a good thing. Unfortunately, it's not true. The current ordinance prohibits amplified sound that can be heard off your property 24 hours a day. Whether intentional or not, the communication is not true and does not give the casual reader of the information necessary to make a decision on the proposed changes. This may be contrasted to the last noise ordinance change, May of 20, which was much more complete. By the way, that's what that looked like. It was 2 pages. It was fairly comprehensive rather than a paragraph of misleading information. The proposed ordinance adds a rather self-serving statement of policy, which states that the goal of the town is to encourage economic and recreational activity while ensuring that the time periods during which many residents are customarily at rest have an expectation of peaceful enjoyment of their residence not be disturbed. I don't know about you, but I have an expectation of peaceful enjoyment of my residents 24 hours a day, not just from 11 o'clock to 10 o'clock, and I believe that most other residents do as well. If you believe that a statement of policy is necessary, which I don't, then it should also contain language that the economic and recreational activities must take all reasonable actions to minimize noise and impact on residents. The proposed ordinance has vague and ambiguous language of what a violation is between the hours of 10 a.m. and 11 p.m., leaving it entirely to the discretion of the noise enforcement officer. This is analogous to having a speed limit between 11 p.m. and 10 a.m. and then leaving it up to an enforcement officer to decide if someone is going too fast the rest of the time. No one would think this is reasonable, yet this is exactly what you're proposing to do with a noise ordinance. To correct this is not complicated. For example, in Sea Island, a community very comparable, I would say, to Kiowa, from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m., it is illegal to play any mechanical sound-making device that can be heard at 300 feet or that can be heard inside an adjoining residential dwelling. Not complicated, and it's easy. It's easy for an enforcement officer. Charleston County has a similar ordinance. You cannot play music that can be heard inside another person's residence. I would suggest that that would help the peaceful enjoyment, and making this change would solve the most significant deficiency in the proposed ordinance. The other change which is necessary to the ordinance is to also include the DBC sound measurement. The DBC measures low frequency noise, which is the most harmful. This is noise which causes the bass vibrations that you feel and hear. The future quality of life for residents will be directly impacted by the proposed noise ordinance changes. I encourage you to get meaningful feedback from the community, some of which you saw in the board packet from a very light effort in Iowa, and also to adopt the common sense changes that I have proposed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bannon.
Other comments? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Brad Bell, 151 Bobcat. I'm on the Riverview POA. There are two items that are on the council's agenda today which are of acute interest to the Riverview community, and I'm coming forward to address those. One of which is the proposed consolidation of Beachwalker parcels. If you will indulge me, I will reserve comment until after Mr. Permar has had an opportunity to present the Kiowa Partners' perspective on those issues. I would like to touch up briefly upon the ordinance provision, which generally ascribe to what the last gentleman said, but don't have a particular view about the ordinance as a whole. The concern that has been raised by several members of the Riverview community is the use of leaf blowers, and particularly at early hours of the morning. There is a little bit of potential confusion with regard to the way in which these, the statement of policy and the general prohibition now interacts with the last provision regarding maintenance activities as well as construction activities. The concern for Riverview residents is the persistent use of multiple leaf blowers starting around 7:15 in the morning, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and occasionally on weekends at the Kiowa Island Real Estate Office Building. And when those are used, they're no more than 30 or 40 feet from one of the residences. There's nothing that is more disturbing of peace and tranquility and restful sleep than multiple leaf blowers blasting that time of the morning. Now, if the general prohibition is adopted as I read it now, prohibiting anything over 60 dBs between 11 p.m. and 10 a.m., that would no longer allow the use of those leaf blowers at that time of the morning that they currently are, allow people to get some sleep in the morning, enjoy peace and tranquility with their coffee. It wasn't clear, though, what the added new language in subsection 5, maintenance activities, what that was meant to actually undercut that general prohibition by suggesting that commercial and contracted maintenance activities are permissible between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. So that's a matter of clarification as much as anything else. It does just seem odd to have a general hours of maintenance activities in a general noise ordinance, but putting that aside, our particular concern, at least that represented to me by certain of our residents, is specifically with regard to leaf blowers early in the morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay. Mr. Kumar, you're up.
Excuse me, just one.
She needs it.
Do you want it on your front line?
Yeah.
Okay, it's gonna take just a second.
I apologize.
No, it's all right. It's just gonna take a second to warm up.
Again, I apologize to everyone, but an architect and planner cannot make a public presentation but without a crutch of a slideshow. So, Mr. Mayor and members of council and those in attendance today, my name is Mark Primar. I'm here representing Kiowa Partners, who is the owner of a collection of parcels that are between the general store and Kika's offices. So if I could refer to this slide up on the screen. I think everyone in this room knows what the general context is, but let me recall it. This is the Kiowa Island Parkway, up the upper part of the slide. This is the intersection with Beachwalker Drive that sweeps down to the bottom here. The neighborhoods of Riverview are right here, Inlet Cove right here, Kika office right there, Greens Lake right in here. The first fairway of Cougar Point is located along the eastern side here, and the last piece of the puzzle, because this is a puzzle, is the general store in this position. Kiowa Partners is the owner of this collection of parcels in this area. Today's session is an informational session. We are not seeking any approvals today. In fact, we look forward to some additional informal sessions, not only council, but also other people within the immediate area, which began informally this past week, but there will be other sessions in which we can share with you more of our thoughts. But we thought today would be a really good opportunity to provide some basic background for everyone. I'm going to provide a little bit of historical perspective, sort of an archaeological dig of what happened, what precipitated all of this quilt of parcels in here. I'm going to go through the existing entitlements, and then I'm going to briefly describe some of the thoughts that are being considered by Kiowa Partners in terms of developing potential amendment that might be considered by the community. So let me start. Historical reference. This quilt of ownership right here is very atypical of Kiowa property owned by Kiowa Partners, as many of you know. So for example, what is typical is there'll be parcels throughout the island. So let me take two examples. One at the extreme east end, Ocean Park. That was a large parcel of about 225 or 35 acres. It was conceived as a whole place. Standards were developed for the entire neighborhood, and then phased processes of plats that were prepared over the life of Ocean Park. One that's closer to this, at the end of Beachwalker Drive, right in here, off the page, is affectionately known as Parcel 13. But Parcel 13 was a whole parcel until a subdivision was developed based upon standards, where the first piece of that was timbers, and then the next piece was the cape, and there's one remaining piece. So it was like the reverse of what we're doing in this location. Historically, what has happened over time, you probably wonder, why are these parcel lines the way they are? At one time, when the Kuwaitis purchased the assets from the C.C. Royal family in '74, the island as a whole was just one giant parcel. They developed a master plan of which this was known as Tract 3. If you were to go back to the original master plan zoning documents before Charleston County, this was a tract, number 3. It established 10 units per acre for about 60 acres total, or roughly high 500, 600 units. And it had certain standards which allowed for 4 to 5 stories. The standards were applied very loosely, flexible throughout the island. Over time, the original Kiowa Island Company sold a piece of property out here by the front gate for a third party to develop the general store. For those of you that were on the island at that time, that was not only the general store, but there was a firehouse in there. There was one truck in the back bay in this location. This was the go-to place before West Beach Village happened. Additionally, the company at that time sold this tract off, Parcel 9, where many of you would remember Beachwalker Office Park. There aren't buildings there anymore, but the parking lot is there. That third party was a home builder, and he built, Ruckheimer, I think was the name. He built Inlet Cove, he built Sparrow Pond, he built individual homes, but it was owned by a third party. There was also a commitment at the point of sale from the Royals to the Kuwaiti group to identify a minimum 1 acre parcel on Kiowa for a potential church. One of the 7 heirs had a particular relationship with a group of people in a church. Their vision at that time was potentially in the future, now again, remember, this is 1974, to build a church on Kiowa. That was established in that position right there in the mid-70s. I'd have to look at the plat, but it was a requirement of the contract of sale. So these remained as the original parcel, parcel 11, and this remnant over here, sort of like a South Carolina congressional district over here. And over time then, as these 2 parcels came on the market for sale, the previous owners, they approached Kiowa Partners to see if they were interested in buying this, essentially buying it back, which they did in 2008. The third party sold it to the company and it was restored to the Kiowa Partners. In 2000, bear with me here. 2016, that heir of the Royals and their entity decided to sell this and not build a church. And again, approached Kiowa Partners to see if they would be interested, in which they did, and they purchased it. That's how this quilt happened. It wasn't normal for Kiowa standards. What I want to share with you are the development rights, the entitlements for all of these parcels on the next series of slides that will then lead to a thought that we have of reconsolidating them, bring all those parcels back to one whole for a more comprehensive planning approach. But my mission today is to provide you the existing conditions. So let me go to the next slide. This is a plat that would represent that aerial photography with the yellow lines on it. So for example, up here is the general store. There's Beachwalker Drive right there. And this is the parkway. And this is directly opposite where, you know, the little parking area behind the main gate where people can park to get a pass issue or their deal. That is located right in that position. And you can see part of the master leisure trail system up to the top here. I'm going to provide a more descriptive diagram in just a minute, but this is sort of a recordation of the conditions that exist today. Now, this graphic, which I have copies of this graphic that I want to hand out, so, and now come back here. Just a minute.
Do you want me to hand?
Yeah, if you don't mind. So these are the same ones for council, same one, and then this is for the attendees. This is an important diagram in terms of understanding the basic entitlements for these parcels that I just went through for everyone.
Thank you.
In no particular order, but I guess I'll do it numerically. The first parcel I'm going to describe, and these are referred to in the existing development agreement, which is a contract between the Kiowa Partners and the town of Kiowa Island. Historically, let me refer to that first, big picture. The original master plan that I referred to in 1974, which was approved by county in 1975, known as PDD 1A, described it had a conceptual master plan for the entire island, established limits of the number of units, height, setbacks, and a whole variety of things like a classic planned development district would be, but it was for the entire island. That was done in 1975. It was approved by county in 1975. increment your way forward a little bit to 1988, where we decided as a community to establish our own institutional group, the town of Kiowa Island. At that point, the action by the new town of Kiowa Island was to simply transfer those entitlements that were in the county to the new town. No changes. It just subdivision regs, road code, master plan, entitlements attributed to that. As our community evolved in 1994, actually starting in 1993, because it took about a year, we evolved an approach to update that master plan that was 20 years prior. Now imagine, it's mid-70s, now we're in the mid-90s, and we need to reflect on the development pattern that has evolved for those 20 years. The first development agreement was 1994. At that time, the entitlements that were established for Parcel 11 and Parcels 8 and 10 over here, those standards were established. Those are the ones that exist today. There haven't been any changes to those standards. The town established zoning as an underlay for these properties right here, because every piece of property on Kiowa, regardless of whether it's in a development agreement with the resort, with Kiowa Partners, or is just an individual home with a lot, has underlying zoning to it. And these parcels right here, parcels 9 and the former church parcel right here, have zoning that I'm going to describe. Since 1994, there have been 3 significant updates of the development agreement: 94, 2005, I believe, and 2013. There have been approximately 15 amendments to those various ordinances. So from a process standpoint, we're talking about the possibility of considering another amendment to the existing 2013 development agreement. In this development agreement that exists today, these are existing entitlements. This parcel is only zoned commercial, can't have any residential on it, and is limited to 2.5 stories. In each circumstance that I'm going to describe, I've delineated on that little handout that I gave to you the formal setbacks that exist in the existing development agreement. So that white area that's on the inside is the residual, which is where you can place buildings. Parcel 9 is, again, in the existing development agreement. It is zoned a combination, which is not abnormal for many parcels within the development agreement. R-2, and it equates to as many as 10 dwelling units, or commercial, which is 19,000 square feet. The height limit in this area, similar to this parcel, is 2.5 stories. Parcel 10 over here, many people that have started to learn more about these parcels assume, and it's a legitimate assumption, well, you can't really develop that property if you get a thought of what it is. In fact, when you're playing this hole, it feels like it's part of the golf course. I mean, from a pragmatic standpoint. But technically, that parcel could be developed in a manner that is allowed by the R2 category or the commercial category, and again, it's limited to 2.5 stories. Now, I have some preconceived thoughts about the nature of the future of that I want to end with, but I just wanted to at least represent the entitlements that exist today allow for that. This larger property here, this is the largest parcel, parcel 11. It's just a little under 6 acres. It allows for both R3 category, which is the highest density of units, and it allows for commercial and/or commercial. But more importantly, it allows for 4 stories, or 4 stories over parking. So for example, examples of that are close to the hotel. Maritime has 3 stories over parking. At the end of Beachwalker Drive on the ocean, Timbers is 4 stories over parking. The future Cape would be 4 stories over parking. It has more restrictive dimensional height standards, but that's what it allows for in that location. Now, the part that I want to refer to is its relationship with surrounding neighborhoods. So in no particular order, but it actually is from a timing standpoint. To the south here, across from, this is a lagoon that wraps right through there. This is the upper portion of Greens Lake, which is immediately opposite the lagoon in this position. Greens Lake sales release was February of 1977. It's one of the very earliest of all releases during the early years. But not too far after was Inlet Cove Club across the street right here. That was in March of '79. Excuse me while I get some. More recently, though, is Riverview. And if I'm not, I might be off some, but I believe, and members in Riverview probably correct me, but I think initial releases were in 2018 in Riverview, across the way. And you see the main sales office right here. The impact and the relationship of future development on this is an important factor to these existing neighborhoods. In my very brief but early sessions with representatives from these neighbors, represented, levels of concern, which I'm sure they'll show later on, about things like density and height and traffic and what do things look like and a variety of other things, or what are the plans, when would they occur? They're very, what I would consider normal questions that I would be asking in my neighborhood about what might be happening across the way. But I wanted to at least represent the nature of what could happen today in this quilt. Our approach now, and this is where I'll end, I apologize for taking so long. Our approach now is not to present a proposal today. What we want to do is share with you a lot of the work that we have conducted over multiple years. What you do is you do studies on parcels like this, and then you set them aside for a later date. It's simmering. It's what I do in terms of you get familiar with the site and the conditions, the market conditions, the construction any number of influences as to what would be appropriate for the site, and then you reconnect. That's what we're doing right now as a company, and we feel comfortable enough that we want to at least share with you we're into that process. And we look forward to a later date where we can share with the community, immediate neighbors, and council members more specific plans, both what you could do on this property as well as what might make sense if adjustments were made, which I am now transitioning to the concept of what next steps would be. We believe that the whole of this property should be restored to a singular parcel. It shouldn't be cut up like this quilt. That would allow for us to take a more comprehensive approach to master planning this as a whole rather than piecemealing each parcel. We can do that technically, and we can figure that out, but a more appropriate approach for this parcel, as well as the byproduct to the neighborhood, is to reflect on that. In that process, we believe that there are particular areas that we would like to consider. First of all, we would not change the cap on density limits or square footage attributed to commercial, setback standards, off-street parking standards, and all the standards that exist today or that are basic to this place as a whole. We wouldn't change any of that. We're not upgrading density at all. We're not proposing that. There are 4 individual curb cuts with each one of these parcels. So you have one down here somewhere. You have this panhandle to the former church parcel. We can sort of emulate the old Beachwalker Office Park where that curb cut exists now. And the one that's the least appropriate would be the only way you can get to this parcel if it's maintained in an isolated way like this is on the parkway. That makes no sense to have a curb cut there. So we were going to be proposing in the future a reduction of 4 curb cuts to no more than 2. And in fact, if we develop a plan where it's only residential, we would stipulate it would be only 1 curb cut. So, and it would be on Beachwalker, by the way. It wouldn't be out here on the Parkway as a back way to get behind the gate. I understand that might be a thought by some that this is another way to actually get to the parcel. This makes no sense if you go through that gate. The other thing is that we would begin to tailor where certain heights of structures would be. As I pointed out, this whole run right here along Beachwalker, opposite Riverview and Inlet Cove Club, and then opposite this portion of Greens Lake, that's where the highest height limit is allowed. It makes more sense for both us and the surrounding neighborhood if there is a height allowance for that. It should be up here further where it's not opposite this. This is the golf course. It should be more in this direction in that position. So we're working on a graphic that might begin to very specifically stipulate where certain heights would be allowed. We're also proposing probably in some form a consideration that is a more updated version that has already been accounted for in various multifamily parcels, where we increase the number of, don't change the overall density, but we can increase the number of residential units within a building so that we'd have fewer buildings, because you can consolidate those, which means you have more open space. We would like to establish and contribute a part of the master trail system by finding a location here that we can collaborate on where you could more safely wrap around the general store, tie into the master trail system, and then go, if you're going to Freshfields or going to the beach or a variety of other things, rather than this existing intersection that we all know is not a very safe location. And finally, to address this, why would you want to develop out in here? Even though some think you can't develop, technically you could, we would commit to no development out here, keep it as retained open space as part of the overall system, and whatever development would be considered over in this location. I'm not representing today a specific plan, but I have indicated to the thought leaders of some of the people that we've talked with that we look forward to the next level of investigation, and we can share those studies. We can share the studies that here's what it would look like under existing conditions, and here's some thoughts about what it would look like if you didn't have those conditions. So I appreciate the opportunity today. I apologize for taking so long, but I think this is a good starter set. The intent is to take the appropriate amount of time. We are going to continue to reach out to our neighbors as appropriate to share with them our process in this, and then find an appropriate time to reconnect with the town in terms of a specific process. Process being an amendment to the development agreement. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mark. As I had said before, we'll open it up for citizen comments. So, Mark, if you wish to take a few questions, and there's a hand up already, that may be the easiest way to do that. If you want to come forward, sir.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor and council members. And I want to acknowledge that one of my fellow Riverview board members is with us this afternoon, Joe LaSala. And I also want to thank Mark Bernard and KP for actually reaching out to the community early in this process, which is perhaps a bit of contrast to how previous development initiatives got underway. So we are certainly appreciative of that. And we had a good conversation yesterday. Clearly, given the fact that we're directly across the street, this is of acute interest to Riverview in a number of respects, but we would submit it also should be of great interest to the broader community. Let me note at the outset that we're not at all opposed to development of that parcel or those parcels, either as currently configured or potentially combined. And certainly if you would replicate something like Riverview across the road, Forest View, then there probably wouldn't be much of an issue, but that's kind of not where we're at right now, at least based upon what Mark had conveyed to us. I think that to put this in a little bit of context for everybody, what they have notionally discussed is on the exact same acreage footprint as Riverview is 3 times the dwelling unit density plus commercial. And building heights of 4 stories contrasted with 2.5 stories, which in our view raises a host of issues with regard to consistency with the surrounding community in terms of density and building heights and what have you. But again, we're not at all opposed to appropriate levels of development. What we have expressed to the KP representative, to Mark, is the Riverview board, and I can't speak for them, was just on the phone just before this meeting with one of the Inlet Cove board members, and I believe they would be of the same view, is that we would be vigorously opposed to any consolidation and upzoning by the town, or agreeing to amend the development agreement, unless and until there is a fully developed plan presented as to what Kiowa Partners actually intends to build, not just conceptually what they could by right, and also what the impact would be on traffic, particularly at the Beachwalker Kiowa Island Parkway intersection, which is already, as we all know, stressed. And if you were to actually add another 100 new dwelling units, we'd have to fully all understand what the implications are for getting ingress and egress out of Beachwalker and what that would do to traffic flow along Kiowa Island Parkway. But a couple of things just to comment on, and Mark, I think, pretty much acknowledged this. As a practical matter, we're not land use lawyers, we're not developers. Parcel 10 isn't developable, economically or otherwise. There's actually no access to it whatsoever. So a theoretical, we could build 4 units on it, is just a straw man. Parcel 8 isn't developable, not economically viable in any way, shape, form, or fashion. The idea that you would actually have a curb cut into the hill, going up the hill, right at the gate or right after the gate, to access what would be less than an acre to build, I don't know what, some small little outhouse or something, some small building, doesn't make any economic sense. What that's clearly all about is adding that acreage into a combined units to allow greater density on the rest of the parcel. We certainly understand that. I want to tie back into, so part of this is just, let's see how this develops, and that's what Mark has represented to us, is that they'll come back to us with a more fully developed plan, and I assume that they would do that with the town as well. But I want to tie back into the town's role, and apropos of the very constructive conversation during the strategic planning meeting. And I discussed this a little bit with council and town administrator after that meeting, is what was contemplated was a substantial expansion of kind of the process and opportunity for public input with regard to Section 159, planned developments. Our view would be that exact same thought process and deliberative process and opportunity for public input should also pertain to the economic development agreements amendments. And it should, this is not at issue here, should also pertain to Section 158, which would be non-multi-use zoning agreements. For example, if the good ones come back and say, no more planned development, no more mixed use, it's just going to be commercial, what we want to do is have you annex, and that's just going to be a doubling the size of Freshfields and a doubling the size of the grocery store, and we want to site that all on a replatted portion of the 80 acres. Our view, my view, would be that the community would have exactly the same interest, and you'd want to consider the same kinds of criteria that you're contemplating in Section 179 with regard to 159, community involvement, community outreach, the letters of support, all the various criteria that are referenced in 159, those would seem to be equally applicable to sections 158 and 160, because you're implicating the exact same set of community in town interest in each of those cases. The last point I would simply make is with regard to process, apart from creating a more robust review of any planned amendments to the development agreement, I would note that the church parcel, the asterisk parcel, is not part of the development agreement. And it would be our view that could not in fact be combined as a result of some amendment to the development agreement, but any rezoning of that would have to go through the town's ordinary zoning processes. So that's simply what our preliminary perspective is on this issue, and again, we want to make the town aware of that. Appreciate the input of the town administrator and council in conversations earlier, and look forward to continuing conversations, and very much appreciate the opportunity to speak before the council today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comment?
I have a comment.
Yes, ma'am.
This came in from Mr. Scott Nelson. He had stated, the proposed amendment is being brought forth by Kiowa Partners rather than the town. They clearly will garner a significant economic benefit from the amendment. I urge the town negotiate with the partners to get some benefit from the amendment rather than giving a benefit for free. Perhaps a contribution to the Kiowa Beach Road project or similar concession could be sought. Scott Nelson, 65, Permisan Court. You want me to read that in for the record?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mark.
Did Mark want?
Thank you for taking the time to meet with all the residents. And
Did you want to comment?
you got it.
You don't
Okay.
want to respond back. You don't want to respond back to the comments. Okay. Okay.
Okay. Item B, to consider approval of ordinance 2021-10, an ordinance of the town council of the town of Kiowa amending section noise ordinance. I would like to have a motion to table this.
I so moved.
Second. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Why? Well, I thank Joe for the work that he did and the town council for taking the time. It was in October, November, August, September. In the last 2 months, we had 2 very dedicated times just to discuss the noise ordinance. Joe took our thoughts, our comments, our ideas. We researched the literature. We looked at other communities, all of those types of things, and prepared a first reading. We had our first reading last month. Well, we had our first reading.
Yeah.
And from that first reading, there were other comments, suggestions, and if in the material you have, it's the red and the green. I struggled with this. I read it, and under general prohibition, there's the word disturb. What does it mean? Who's disturbed? When Dan's playing his boombox on my street, am I disturbed? So resident to resident, when one of the renters down the street has a party, am I disturbed? When the Sandcastle's having a party, am I disturbed? When the partners are having a party at one of their entities, am I disturbed? When the resort may be having an event, am I disturbed? What does it mean? How are we going to, because what it does mean, it gives a resident the right, the prerogative to contact Stephanie, call the code enforcement officers. They go out there, and to that single individual, they're adjudicating whether the resident has been disturbed or not. Then at that point, they agree. You've been disturbed. They can write a warning. They can write tickets. Then there's penalties, or they can say, no, ma'am, you weren't disturbed. What does that mean? Then the resident is angry because we get into all of this, and through all of this time and effort and hours we put into this thing, we're still stuck with disturb. So, and I have no idea whether this will work, but we're going to give it a try. I have asked John Moffett to head up a task force, ad hoc committee. When all else fails, form a committee. we'll have a committee, and John will lead it, of interested residents, the community. And we'll try to put some framework around the word disturb. What does it mean that a Kiowa resident has been disturbed? I've only made suggestions to John, but they can have open meetings, they can have people come and attend. Maybe at the end of 30, 60, whatever days, we won't have accomplished anything, and we'll be right back with a second reading. But maybe we will. Maybe there'll be some, I don't want to say this to be critical, but there'll be some wisdom, there'll be some ideas, there'll be some suggestions around criteria. That's what I'm hoping for. Criteria that Stephanie can have as she works with our code enforcement officers that could say, you know, almost like a checklist in terms of what the people from the community have felt constitutes disturb. And then they'll have to, again, exercise their own judgment. So we're going to table this. And we're going to go through this exercise, and we'll see where it goes. And we can, if people are interested.
You have a second, you need to call for the vote. You have a first and a second, now you just have to call for a vote.
Oh, to table it.
Table it.
I'm sorry.
There's
All
no
in favor?
discussion when you table it.
Aye.
We haven't seconded.
Has it been seconded? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
it was second, I think
Okay,
Scott seconded.
so it's voted. So we've tabled it. Now I've talked. So, yes, Dan?
I just wanted to add one thing that you and I have talked about. We think it's important to add members of the community to include
Yes,
the resort, Kika,
yes, Yes.
the town, people who have a vested interest
Yes.
in what is noise and how are we all affected,
yes,
need to be at the table because they can help us solve the problem.
yes.
We
Very good.
don't want to ignore them.
Very good, Dan. Yes, yes. I think it was referred to as both passionate and unpassionate people about this whole issue of noise, so impassionate, I guess. Okay, have we done it right? So we've tabled it, we've had our discussion, and we'll see what happens. So John, we got to, people that would be interested should contact you? Okay. So it's a committee, an ad hoc committee, it'll have a beginning and it'll have an end, it won't be an ongoing group, but, so we'll see. Okay. Our resolution to,
Well, I didn't know if you wanted me to say something about a couple of these issues that were raised with us.
I don't think so, John.
Okay,
I don't think so.
fair enough.
At this time. Okay. Item C is to consider approval of resolution to provide additional benefit option to retirement coverage. Stephanie, do you want to provide a brief explanation?
Yeah, Dorota, it's her
Oh,
resolution,
is it
so she will present that.
Excuse me.
Yes. Well, thank you. Currently, the town of Kiowa participates in the employee benefit program that is run by the PBA, which is the Public Employee Benefit Authority. And they offer retirement for all the town employees. They have two different pools of retirement benefit. One is called South Carolina Retirement System, and that's for active and retired employees. And another one is PORS, which is Police Officer Retirement System. And they also have two options for active and retired employees. The town actually participates right now in active and retired for SORS, but for the police officer retirement system, we only have retirement option for the retired employees. So by adding a new employee that actually is currently active, crack, we asking that we add this additional option in that pool. So it's pretty much, instead of just for him contributing to the same pool, but for the retirement and active police officers. And the contribution of the town are the same. So it's just pretty much like a technical task. and it has to be done by majority of votes of the council. And once it's voted, I will start the process with PIBA, and this coverage could be effective April 1st.
So it's a rerouting, basically, of a benefit.
Yes.
To get into the right door.
Because right
Yeah.
now it's only offered for the retired
Right.
police officers. We don't have it for active police officers. Because we never had one that was active
Police stuff.
in that poll.
I got you.
So we're asking for you to approve that resolution, that we can add this additional coverage.
Okay, thank you. Could I have a motion to approve,
I so
please?
move.
Your second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Just so that I'm clear, this covers just Craig, it's not putting the rest of Charleston County Sheriff's Department in this plan?
No.
Correct.
No, sir, no. We already have them. All the off-duty
We already paid
employees
into
are already
Participate.
participating in this program. It's just they either retired, or if they active, they not in the police pool, they in active employees.
Okay.
Aye.
Dorita, while you're there for a second, Dan, do you want to start this off? This is item D, tab 5, consider approval of the state ATEX funding amounts.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. As you know, the town receives a portion of the state accommodations tax. And the purpose of that tax, the purpose of that tax is to promote tourism throughout South Carolina. And tourism defined as people who will come to the state who don't necessarily live in the state typically, and stay overnight and enjoy the island, its accommodations, its food, and so on, and its golf. Anyway, when we did the early request for the people who are eligible to receive funding, we were very unsure as to how much money there would be in the accommodations tax because of COVID. We thought there would be a significant downturn in business on the island. As all of you know, the opposite happened. We got more people staying here than less people staying here. So when the December, if you look at your outline, there was funding requested in April that was approved totaling $1 million, a little over $1 million. And then we had another meeting in December because of the funding level was much higher. And we said, is there anything else this year that would be helpful to do? And that totaled $482,000. There is a committee that recommends funding for this, made up of a variety of citizens and members of the community who are involved in tourism and so on. They made a recommendation to us to fund that at $432,000, which means if you look at the final column, the town would be funding, and we're required to fund this tourism promotion with this money to the tune of $1.5 million, roughly. We have $2 million available for this. It would leave $568,000 left to be carried over and used in the next 2 years. Do you want to add to that, Dorota?
No, just the only thing, that 2 million is actually the projections. It's not.
Yes.
Because we only collected first quarter, and next month we'll get second quarter, but so this number is projected.
It's a projection.
And it could be
Yeah.
based on the trends, it could be even a little more too. But
Right.
we can, like Mr. Prickett mentioned, we can carry over for 2 years, so we all carry
Right.
over to the next year.
Right. But we have to fund the current request so they can actually use it. Otherwise, we don't get promotions down this year.
Yes.
So that's what we've worked on.
So we're asking for the council to approve 432 additional
Right.
applications.
The $1,093,000 was approved at an earlier
Yes, it
council
was.
meeting.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Thanks, Dorita. Could I have a motion to approve, please?
So moved.
Your second?
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Any questions? We had a Ways and Means Committee meeting earlier this week and went through this in pretty good detail. All in favor?
Aye.
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 John, do you want to talk about the dissolution of the Public Works Committee?
Sure. So We have had a Public Works Committee off and on for quite a number of years, and the last time it was put in place, the town staff was a lot leaner and I'll say wasn't as talent-wise wasn't as good as it is now. And what the Public Works Committee had become in the last probably 10 to 11 months or so had been really just an update to the committee members. There was no active involvement by them on our public works projects. And so what we decided a better approach would be to dissolve the Public Works Committee in its current form and go to a format that we've done in the communications area where we establish working groups for specific projects. So for example, if we have a project like maybe trying to figure out what to do at Kestrel Court with the trash, that's probably not something we need a committee of 6 people helping us decide what to do. But if we have a project like reworking the bicycle shared activity path along Beachwalker Drive, that's a pretty extensive project. We might want some involvement from somebody that lives at Inland Cove. We might want somebody that's a paving expert. And so we can create a working group specifically for that project to help us get to a better result. And so in order to do all of that, we need to formally rescind the charter of the Public Works Committee. And so that's what we're asking to do.
Okay. Could I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Stephanie, you want to talk about approval of the amendment to the Public Safety Committee charter?
Yes. You guys can hear me. Mayor, members of council, currently, what we've done in the last couple of years is we've looked at our charters and we have moved a lot of our charters from council chairing them to a senior staff person that was part of that committee, but we're having them chair it and we're having a council person still remain active on that committee, but active in the role of liaison. And so with the Public Safety Committee, and now since we have a Public Safety Director, what we would like to do is amend the charter to move the Public Safety Director to chair, and again, this is just being consistent with what we're doing with the majority of all of our committees, and then still have the council person, which in this case is Mrs. Conley, be the liaison of that committee. Essentially, the way we were working before was I was somewhat, I guess, a liaison or town staff, and so I'm moving away from it, where I'll still attend, or if Mr. Harris or Ms. Conley need me, but those two essentially be in charge of the meeting.
I so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, this will come up over the next Thursday and Friday as we get into the planning retreats. We'll get a good chance to talk.
Yeah, a general public safety in general, yes, that's correct, sir.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Committee appointments. So the first one is the BZA, and Russell Berner and Larry Rosenfeld are the two individuals highlighted. Could I have a motion to reappoint Russell and Lawrence?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Environmental committee, there's none. Is that correct, Stephanie?
They're all, we appoint all.
Excuse me. Could I have a motion to appoint all of the members listed to the environmental committee?
I so move.
Is there a second?
I think Scott did. Scott,
Any-
second.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Planning committee, just one. Larry, you on?
We got one.
Could I, motion to reappoint Larry to the planning commission?
So moved.
Second.
He's a good member, he works hard.
Amen. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And Public Safety Committee, it's all of them.
Yes.
Could I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Stephanie, Town Administrator's Report?
I don't really have anything. I just want to let everyone know, I'm sure Stephanie Braswell, Communication Manager, is excited. She has a new employee, Communication Assistant, that's going to be starting on the 24th. He comes from, can I announce this? Oh, okay. He comes from Berkeley Electric Co-op. He currently works in their communications department. His name again is Chris Mikowski. So real excited. I'm sure she's thrilled that she's going to finally have eventually a full staff by the end of this month. And again, I'd like to thank all my senior staff. A lot of them are back there. 4 of them are back there with Brian, Public Works Manager, Craig Harris, new Public Safety Director, and Dorota Schubert is the Finance Director. And then John Taylor here is the Planning Manager. Thank them all. They do a great job. And so they're going to be ready Thursday and Friday for the retreat. And I invite everyone to come and listen or view live stream. We're going to essentially lay out our priorities based on some of the things that you all want to do as a community for the next year. That's all I have to report at this time. Thank you.
Very good, Stephanie, thank you. Committee updates, John?
Did we miss?
Mary Ann?
No, Mayor.
Dan, anything?
I want to just make one comment if I can, since a lot of this sometimes doesn't get attention. The town continues to be active in the area of improving the roads between here and wherever we want to go to leave Kiowa and get back to Kiowa. The county has been active. John Taylor, our planner, and I have been active with community members, both on Johns Island and in our communities, and with other groups that we think can help forward in a sound and reasonable way the improvements that we need to our roads. There is likely to be in the next few months some public hearings on this. As we know more about that, and we invite all of you as residents to make sure your voices are heard. We need improvements to the roads. We need to acknowledge the fact that I-526 is a possibility. And if it is a possibility, you have to plan your road system to potentially incorporate it. So the town is active. We think it's terribly important over the next decade or two that certain safety and just road improvements be made, not to necessarily expand development. Unfortunately, if you drive up and down Main Road, development is happening. We just need roads that will at least allow us to safely get back and forth to where we need to get. The town is very active there, and we'll keep you posted. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. It should be known that Dan does a remarkable job. He has created a network of contacts throughout, from the county to our local neighbors throughout, that are really getting support on the position that we're taking relative to the road. So we really thank you, Dan, for the leadership to be able to do that. General comments, anything? Citizen?
Scott.
Oh, excuse me, Scott. There you are. Yes, sir.
Yeah, the Kiowa Goes Greener ad hoc committee has not taken the top day off, but we have not met since October, and that's intentional to give people a chance to implement some of the initiatives that they were trying, and we will be meeting again back in February to review where the last several months have gone. Specifically, for example, Kika's maintenance crew has been looking at battery-powered lawn landscaping equipment, and we will get a report and some feedback upon how that goes and what that might have for the island in general.
Great. Good. Okay. Thank you, Scott. Citizen comments. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon. I'm Maura McIlvain from 146 Blue Heron Pond Road, and also from the Reform It Now Kiowa group. I stand here just to express our appreciation for what you did for us today. The workshop you held, specifically dedicated to both the annexation and the zoning issues we raised, we felt was very meaningful. We thought it was very productive. We felt a receptivity to the suggestions that we forwarded to you, and an open-mindedness, which we were very heartened by. We were happy to hear that community involvement was something that you were embracing, and that community input was something that you felt strongly about, because obviously we do as well. So I stand here merely to thank you and to say we are looking forward to working forward on the issues and the language and some of the issues that were spotted today that may come back to us through Stephanie, and we'll work with you to try to get it right and to try to do what we both seem to want to do, which is to get more community input and insight into what might happen in all of our communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Maura.
Thank you, Mara. That means a lot. Thank you very much. And as I said this morning, thank you and others who took the time and effort to really work on those 15 suggested proposed changes. That was, as we saw this morning, coming up with language on anything, least of all ordinances, is not it's a time-consuming effort. Any other comments? We are adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mayor.